So thank you for coming out tonight. It's really cold. I'm from Melbourne, so it is really freezing, so I appreciate you being here. Tonight I'm going to talk to you about breathing life into the dying arts. And as Victoria said, I am a taxidermist. When I tell people that I am a taxidermist, they usually think that I do tax or I am a taxi driver. But taxidermy is in fact the art of preparing, stuffing and mounting the skins of animals with lifelike effect. Look, I can't have you all falling asleep, so... It was a real challenge for me to get into the industry in Australia. I moved down from Brisbane to Melbourne, and I moved down with a corporate job, and I really wanted to find a creative outlet. The main issue with that is that I'm talentless. I can't draw, dance or sing, so there were very few avenues for me to pursue. And having moved to Melbourne, there are amazing curiosity shops down there. And I started to buy a few skulls and pieces from the natural world, and I really found it to be very beautiful. And having taken a few of those things home, it was then that I realised that other people perhaps don't have the same enthusiasm for it, and found it a little odd. And it sparked a curiosity in me to see if I could go and learn how to do taxidermy in Australia. And what I found out through my research is that taxidermy hadn't actually been taught since the 1970s. It was actually taken off the syllabus at TAFE universities because essentially people were unemployable. It's really fascinating because if you are to go to museums in places like the United States or the United Kingdom, they have these incredible diorama halls that really work to capture the natural world, and we don't seem to really have that in Australia, and our taxidermy collections are incredibly dire. And I find that interesting because we're one of the most biodiverse places on the planet, and we have some of the most unique flora and fauna. So the very little amount of work that gets done tends to be outsourced to private taxidermists who have learnt their skills and their trades overseas. So upon finding out this information, I did want to find an avenue. I don't know if it was really the taxidermy that interests me, but more so, why can't I learn this? And so I looked into courses overseas, of course, in the US and all throughout Europe. That's fantastic to go and do a couple of weeks, but I decided that I really wanted to, throw myself into this and really learn properly, and I would like to find a mentor. So I did a lot of research, and I did find that one of the biggest taxidermy studios in Australia happens to be in Melbourne, and the person who runs that facility is called Gary Pegg, and I decided that Gary was going to become my mentor. The only issue with that is that Gary didn't know that he was going to become my mentor. So, you start out quite nicely, as email inquiries go. And so this email is simply called Inquiry. January 2, 2012. Inquiry. Hi, Gary. I've done quite a bit of reading on yourself and your experience in the taxidermy industry. I'm extremely interested to learn, however, I am unable to find anyone who offers courses or teaches. I've emailed once before to see if you would offer lessons or require someone to volunteer on weekends, and also contacted Julia DeVille, who referred me back to you. If you're unable to assist, I note that you travelled to the States to learn. Is there someone you could recommend over there? Any assistance you could provide would be greatly appreciated. So, of course, Gary didn't respond. And I started to look back into courses over in the US. I actually booked one to go over there and do. And then 2 weeks later, I sent Gary another email. And don't worry, I actually sent 200. You're not going to have to sit here for 15 minutes while I read 200 emails. But I will give you a little glimpse of my experience. So this one's called Follow Up. Hi, Gary. Just following up on my recent emails. I've done extensive reading on you and note that you've won a World Championships for a black cockatoo. Well done. Would love to hear from you in relation to learning or helping out Nat. So at this point, Gary doesn't respond, of course. And another few weeks goes by. I decide to cancel my ticket to the States because Gary's going to teach me. So now it's Valentine's Day, and you can tell I don't have a partner because I'm emailing Gary. Hi, Gary. This one's called Interest in Taxidermy. Hi, Gary. Really looking forward to hearing from you. I've cancelled my ticket to the States to learn because I know that you are my man. You really shouldn't say that with the hashtag #MeToo movement. It's, like, not ideal right now. We'll keep on reading up in taxidermy in the meantime, and if I don't hear from you, I will email you in another 2 weeks. P.S. Happy to work for free. So when you start sending 200 emails, it becomes really difficult to come up with clever content. So this one happened at 2 a.m. in the morning. Hi, Gary. I'm well. Thanks for asking. I hope you are too. I went to an exhibition on taxidermy and it was fantastic. Let me know if you want the details. Perhaps I could take you to it. I've been reading lots and looking things up online. However, it seems that you are the cream of the crop. So I'm just going to sit here waiting patiently, drowning my sorrows in red wine until I hear from you. Can come out anytime you like on Saturdays. Nat. He didn't respond to that. I mean, I thought that was quite clever. Now I'm really running out of stuff to say. So this is March. Hi, Gary. I noticed you've updated your website. It looks great. Much more user-friendly and the photos are fabulous. Can't wait till I come out one day. Did I mention I would work for free? Nat. Finally, in June. Hi, Natalie. Please stop email. It took 6 months. Really? You're either going to go to jail for stalking or the guy's going to take you on, you know? Hi, Natalie. Please stop emailing me. Give me a call at home and perhaps we can talk sometime. If you're this serious, we can throw some ideas around. Regards, Gary. Yay! So I go out to Thomastown. It's this industrial area in Melbourne, and I go out with my little lipstick and blonde hair, and I probably had inappropriate footwear on, walking on the gravel like a baby giraffe, and I rock up and Gary takes one look at me and he's like, you're not going to last a second. But little did Gary know, and he should have known better. 200 emails, really? I'm really tenacious. So this is Gary. And I actually worked every weekend for free for 3 years. And one of the main issues with this, other than working for free for 3 years, is that Gary had learnt his trade in the States, and despite knocking down that door and breaking down that wall, he was very reluctant to share his information with me. And so essentially after 3 years of working for free, I was only taught really by Gary how to skin birds. And a professional skinner does not a taxidermist make. So I was feeling fairly disheartened with the industry, and I took long service leave with my corporate job in insurance and finance, of all things. And so I took my long service leave to head over to Spain, and I was really fortunate to make contact with a gentleman named Ramon Garros, and he lives in a little village called Los Yebenes, which is basically in the centre of Spain. And all I knew is that I had to get to the Toledo train station, and his wife Nuria was going to be picking me up to take me out to meet him. So we would drive an hour or two inland from Toledo. And so I arrived, and Ramon doesn't speak a word of English, which is not his issue. I'm in Spain, but I don't speak a word of Spanish. I've tried 3 times, but I just can't seem to pick it up. I also went to Barcelona to learn Spanish, which is stupid because they speak Catalan, so, that's a rookie error. So I got to Ramon's studio in Los Yebenes, and he's incredible. When you want to depart knowledge on someone, you can do that even if you can't speak the same language. And he let me live and work with him and shared this knowledge with me without language, and I was really fortunate when I was there that he happened to be building a museum on the history of hunting, and so I was able to work on the museum with him. That's no. So this is Ramon, and he, I think, for me, was the catalyst of thinking, if I've worked for free for 3 years and then I've travelled halfway around the world by myself and lived and worked in a place with someone who can't speak the same language as me, I wonder if there's other people like myself in Australia that might like to learn this. And so I came back, and this is when I started Rest in Pieces Taxidermy. And initially I started just teaching one mouse workshop on a Sunday once a month. And I did wonder, would people come? I really wasn't sure if there was interest. And they did come. In fact, we have 700 students now. And the interesting thing to me is that 90% of my students are females. They're all from different walks of life. They're different ages. They're different races, religions, meat eaters, vegans, vegetarians. They don't have a lot in common other than two very simple things. They're curious, and they have a love for science, art and animals, and it's a really amazing culmination of that. Exactly like, I guess, the students started to come, so did the media interest. So we started to have a lot of TV, magazines, things like that. And that's really positive for essentially what was a dead art trying to revive itself within a country. That's really positive. But unfortunately, with a lot of press, also in my particular industry came a lot of death threats. And so this was my first one. It was from a lovely guy named Val, and he said, "How is MX posting this? I'm disgusted they'd advertise this barbaric act. I wish death upon no one, but when Natalie does die, I hope it's as painful as can be." And that was my first death threat. There's been many since then. And I remember when I got that, I was quite distraught. I was in tears. It's interesting because it was actually quite healthy for me, because I think that I got into taxidermy initially because I thought it would be kitchen cute. But when people start threatening your life and you realise that you're an advocate for something or you're trying to have a voice, it makes you realise that you need to be very clear about what it is you're trying to say or advocate for. And so I think it made me get more serious about the art itself and really question, what am I trying to say, and have a strong voice in the industry. And so I did muster up the courage to respond to Val, and I said to Val, "Hi Val, that's a shame that you feel like that. I think it's a privilege to be able to utilise animals once they're passed and to bring them back to life. It teaches you the beauty of animals, all about anatomy and just how connected we all are." And I do believe that, and it's been really wonderful because it's helped me to, I guess, essentially try and create a safe space and a community for all of our students. It helped me to wisen up and have a strong point of view and a strong perspective, and not play to this kitsch cute thing, like to get really serious about my craft. But I think that one thing I didn't really notice is that through the challenges that I'd encountered of not being able to get into the industry, struggling once I was in it, also getting a lot of flack from the public because we're not having a lot of discussions about death. We're not having a lot of discussions about where do animals come from, what are we consuming. There's quite an issue with metropolitan communities, I would say. It's not really country-based, but metropolitan Western societies have a very big issue around dialogue. And so it raised these things for me, but what I found is that I also started to become part of the problem. I wasn't really willing to share all my information. I became very guarded about my business. I didn't want anyone to compete with me at all. So I kind of became the very thing that I was trying to challenge when I was trying to break into the industry. And so I don't think I quite realised this until I went back to the United States. And I met an amazing woman by the name of Alice Markham. She's a world champion taxidermist. She's doing really fascinating work with 3D printing in taxidermy. But more than that, she was so generous in her knowledge. She runs an all-female taxidermy studio, and she just set me up with so many contacts. And, oh, Luce, can I have my water? My mouth's dry from the painkillers. Thank you. This is Lucy and my assistant. He's an amazing artist. Thanks, babe. So she not only imparted her wisdom on me, but she really welcomed me into her community and just hooked me up with the most amazing connections. It was the absolute opposite of what I had experienced in Australia. And I think it really made me realise how guarded I had become. And so when I actually returned to Australia because of this lady, I realised that it wasn't going to be enough for me to just teach taxidermy by myself and be frightened and terrified of everyone else in the industry. What would be a better approach is what Alice was doing, and that was trying to find people who were also teaching, not teaching, but creating under this banner of conservation or restoration of items in the natural world, and see if they would like to become a collective and join my team so that I could teach them how to teach, but also so that we could create an environment where we could broaden the knowledge of skills that aren't taught in this country. And so when I came back to Australia, I have collected over the last 5 years a really amazing team that are now teachers. Most are self-taught. And the first one, well, that's me. So you saw I started with the RAT course to, I guess, extend our curriculum. I wanted to create a pathway of not just doing a beginner workshop, but what would an intermediate, what would an advanced workshop look like so that there's some pathway for people to navigate. So we've moved into baby chicks, rabbits. I'm writing a rooster workshop right now, things like that. So trying to create a pathway. The second person that I brought onto the team was my best friend, Gerard Gear. He's one of the most emerging artists in Australia right now. He does incredible work utilising the bones of animals. So together we wrote our skeletal articulation workshop, which is really fascinating. It's the opposite of taxidermy. Taxidermy is the arrangement of skin, whereas articulation is really the arrangement of bones. But again, something that hasn't been taught in Australia that we don't have access to. So I've brought him on. And then Sophia Bull Abdullah, she's a new addition to their team. Sophia is an embalmer at Lonely Pines Funeral Home. And so I've brought her on so that we can start to write an embalming seminar and a death positivity workshop, because in order for our trades to be acceptable, we have to start having dialogue around these topics. So this is a really good place for us to start. Gavin is my most recent teacher that I've signed. Signing Gavin was really an exciting time for me. He's the head of the Veterinary Science Lab in Sydney. So he's my first scientist who's joined the team, which it's so lovely to have, to I guess, I wouldn't say respect, I think that's the wrong word, but to have people, even in academia, realise that knowledge isn't being shared and want to come to a platform like ours to share that information. And so we've just started to write our corrosion casting workshop. We launched that recently. So you might be familiar with Gunther Van Hagen's work, who does a lot of the plastination of humans. So he made corrosion casting famous, but it's actually been around since the 1500s. So we're now doing that. And then finally we have Lucia, who came from an art and a costume design background, but does these incredible fox shoulder mounts. So together we're writing an advanced taxidermy workshop at the moment for fox shoulder mounts, which is fantastic. But if it hadn't have been for Alice, I don't think that I would have been brave enough to take a group of people under my wing and realise that you can be successful and create success and take people on a journey with you, rather than being guarded or rather than your knowledge or your skill set dropping off. And not only did we end up with a fantastic team, but one of the beautiful things about now having this new mindset is that it's led to a lot of opportunities for us. First, we rebranded to Rest in Pieces, Breathing Life into the Dying Arts, because I was no longer Rest in Pieces Taxidermy. But it has also meant that I've had opportunities to speak throughout the United States with Alice. I got to be part of a really wonderful project in a little town called Ekalaka in Montana. They run a weekend called Shindig, and this part of Montana is on the KT extinction line, so they allow families to come out to the museum and do dinosaur digs, essentially, and dig up microfossils and what have you. So really interesting concept, because a lot of the time in America people have role models that are celebrities or sports people. So they wanted to bring out people from other countries to try to create role models for the children that were more science-based. So really wonderful project. And I was really lucky because that's my 6'8" bass player partner who knows nothing about the natural history world, but he was quite lucky that we were in Ekalaka, and Nate, my friend who's standing next to me, who runs the museum, he's like, I think you need to come out here. We've found a mammoth and we really need you to help get it out of the ground. So we got to dig up a mammoth. And then the following year, I got to go back to LA, and this time it was wonderful because I got to take my team and we got to teach. And the reason that we were back in the States is because I got asked to run all the programming for the museum in Ekalaka. And this is Gerard, the skeletal articulation artist that I told you about. He's actually making a plesiosaur out of things like snake bones and a little reptile head. And the reason that he's making a plesiosaur is because we got asked to stay on another week to dig up a plesiosaur. And I'll tell you, when I started trying to break into the taxidermy world now 8 years ago, these are certainly things that I never thought I'd have the opportunity to do. They're not really things that you have the opportunity to do in Australia, but I do believe that we can create a different culture of sharing information and making things accessible so that I guess we can experience these things. There wasn't a point when I started taxidermy when I thought that I would be digging up dinosaurs. I guess that's the stuff that is like childhood fantasies. And so what we're trying to do now, I guess, is we want to continue to teach the general public. Also, it's been interesting because we're now starting to see that people in academia and people in museums, they are starting to get funding for their professional development to come and learn from us so that they can take the skills back to work on their own collections in museums or what have you. But what we just want to, I guess, maintain and make sure that we are not just focusing on academia or trying to get funding. We really want to keep a level playing field for, I guess, teaching people, because education isn't necessarily for everyone, but knowledge should be. So I'm going to call time lucky because that was my last slide. Thank you, guys.